Hello everybody. Thank you for coming to our third annual pre-medical forum of KAMSA of Georgia. My name is Wonjo Jang. I'm a fourth year MD PhD student at Medical College of Georgia. KAMSA of Georgia, also known as Korean American Student Association, Medical Student Association of Georgia, is an organization comprised of Georgia medical students. Our board members consist of medical students from years 1 through 4 from Medical College of Georgia and Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. This year we are lucky to have, in addition to the pre-medical forum, we're lucky to have a special guest, Dr. Peter Reed. It was through a connection with Dr. Bryce Choi, and I'm really should thank you for that. Our presenters will be Kudo Jang, Becky Chung, and Sora Pa. They'll be talking mostly about not only the details of applying to medical schools, since this is the information that you can find online, but what we hope to offer you the most is our personal experiences, some of the pitfalls or the mistakes or some of the thinking process that we might have. I think one of the most biggest benefits of having this kind of forum is that your questions, your insightful questions, your situational and contextual questions is what's going to help us answer the questions better. So we're going to have about a 30-minute presentation, but after that, we'll allow some time for question and answer session. This is where a lot of the people who are more comfortable speaking in Korean can talk to our students who are much better at Korean. Before we start this presentation, I want to take this time to give my thanks to the people who really helped me through this. First of all, the audience. Thank you all for being here. This is your weekend, and I really appreciate you taking your time to do this. And second of all, I would like to express my thanks to Hanin회 and Mrs. Bae. They have really not only provided us the venue, but the outreach as well, and they worked really hard to do this for us. And third of all, I want to thank Dr. Bryce Choi, the chairman of the board of the Korean American Medical Association, and Mrs. Choi. Dr. Bryce Choi has not only supported us, but with connecting us to the physicians of Georgia, while also connecting us to this opportunity with Dr. Peter Reed. And also Mrs. Choi has been working more in the behind the scenes, but she's like the mother of our organization, and she has a lot of ingenious ideas that make this opportunity happen. And I also want to thank all the KAMSA of Georgia students. You have to recognize that these kids are very hard, studying hard for the boards and getting ready for residency, but they still take time to do this because I think this is all for the benefits of the Korean American community. So without further ado, SK, can you explain to them what the question is?
네, 안녕하세요. 저희가 오늘 준비한 인포메이션 세션 끝나고 난 뒤에는 한국어가 더 편하신 분들을 위해서 한국어로 질의응답 시간을 가질 예정이니까 많이 그때 질문하실 거 있으시면 질문해 주시면 됩니다.
Hello, my name is Kudo Jang. I'm a third-year medical student at the Medical College of Georgia, and it's my privilege to present in front of so many people who are eager to learn about medical school and the acceptance process. All right, if you go to the next slide. I want to just begin with there are 176 medical schools in the United States, as well as 36 different osteopathic schools. All right, and if you go back. You can look that they're scattered all across the country, but really focused up in the Northeast. In Georgia, because we are KAMSA of Georgia, there are 4 different medical schools as well as 1 osteopathic school. The schools are PCOM, which is our osteopathic school in Suwanee, as well as Emory and Morehouse in Atlanta, Augusta University, Medical College of Georgia in Augusta, as well as Mercer in Macon. Okay. So for the 4 different medical schools and our DO school, the average GPA ranges anywhere from 3.5 to 3.7 for the average admittee. The average Mcat score is anywhere between over 500 and 514. So what does that mean in percentile ranks? The Mcat percentile anywhere between the greater than 50th percentile and the 91st. If you look at Emory, the acceptance rate is one of the lowest in our country at 1.5%. MCG has 7.6%, Mercer at 11.3%, and Morehouse at 1.6%. So overall, the acceptance rate into medical schools in Georgia is actually very low. But the overall U.S. medical school admission rate for 2017 was 41.9%. Alright, so why do we focus so much on GPA and Mcat scores? Well, the number one predictor for acceptance into a medical school is actually GPA and Mcat score. This grid, though it's too small for you to examine for yourself, you can find it on the AAMC website, that stands for Association of American Medical Colleges. What it shows is up in the higher Mcat score you have, the higher GPA you have, the more likely you are to get admitted into a medical school. Alright, so this is an ethnic meeting, and it'd be strange if we didn't have any ethnic data. So what we see here is for the Mcat score, this is drawn from the years 2013 to 2015. Right in the middle, if you look at the kind of darker blue box, there's a score that says 27 to 29 for the Mcat. That's about a 50th percentile, as well as a 3.4 to 3.59 GPA. And that GPA is a somewhat competitive GPA for an undergrad applicant. Okay, so then if we look at it, for the Asian ethnicity, person who's kind of right down in the middle, kind of your average applicant, has a 20% chance of being admitted. So for Asians, it's 20%. For white, it goes up to 30%, even though they have the exact same scores. For Hispanic, what we see is 61%, and for Black and African Americans, 81%. What does this mean? Well, when we look at the total number of applicants between Asians, whites, Hispanics, and Black or Africans, what we see is there's actually a huge, large number of Asian applicants, over 30,000 of them, and they are definitely the largest minority that applies to medical schools. So what does this mean for us? It means that for Asians to be accepted into medical school, within your own race, you need to be more competitive. The good news is, though, the average acceptance rates for Asians is 42.2%, which is still greater than the national average. All right, so then, what does the process to apply to medical school look like? Well, there's a timeline. Okay, during freshman and sophomore year, you want to prepare for applying for medical school. You want to get your Mcat ready. You want to get your classes in order. You want to get your letters of recommendation, and all of these will be discussed later. During your junior year, you want to be kind of thinking about your personal statement, thinking about where you want to apply, why you want to apply, kind of developing as a human being. You want to be applying to Mcat. So Mcat is the application service. To apply for medical school, it's actually a considerable financial burden. So that's something to note before applying. After you do your primary applications to all the different schools have their individual questions that they want to ask you. And in the essay format, you need to answer them, and that's called your secondary application. Lastly, there's an interview period, and that ranges anywhere between September to April of the following year, where each school will send out their offers for interviews, and they will come, you will go to the school, check out the school, they will interview you, and they will see that you're a good fit for their school. Okay, so then the numbers are pretty bleak. To be accepted into medical school, it's not easy, and the chances aren't particularly good. But we have some tips and advice on how to be more than a statistic, to be more than just your numbers, to be someone who has compensatory strength to accompany your scores. So what should you be doing? So I'd like to be speaking right now to any undergraduate students as well as anyone who's thinking about medicine before undergrad. So if you're a student right now, this is for you. Take ownership of your own education. And this is so important because our school systems, our colleges, they're good, but the best medical students that I know, they learn despite their education, despite their teaching, despite the lectures. They take ownership of their own education. So how do you do this? And my recommendation would really be to start reading. I'm sure you guys have heard this lots and lots of times. Just read, read, read. But how many of us actually do it? Expose yourself to new ideas that you are interested about, that you are passionate about. Expand your perspectives. Examine yourself. Identify perspectives that you don't know about. And then this is kind of my plug for a program called audible.com. It's audiobooks. Basically, they have a 1-month free trial, and afterwards, it's about $15 a month. but this is my way of digesting a large number of books over a period of time when I'm extremely busy. And here's a lot of books that I recommend that have been really formative in my own life. So what else should you be doing? You need to learn how to learn. When you take ownership of your own education, what that means is there's ways to learn. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel. This is actually a topic that's extremely well researched and it's well worth exploring. This is one of the most important skills in my opinion. So here's a book that I read called Make It Stick, and it's the science of successful learning, and teaches you tips and techniques that have been researched and tried that have been shown to improve learning and learning retention. And something else you want to do is meet up with your major advisor at least once a semester. So these are individuals who are trained and who are hired to help you along your path, along your career. And they're actually really, really good. Explore your interests and ideas in the form of volunteering opportunities and extracurricular activities. So when I say explore, so a lot of questions ask, what major do I need to be so I can go into medical school? Well, the major doesn't matter so much. What matters is what you're passionate about. So how do you become passionate about something? Well, what I find in my own life is that the things I'm passionate about, I wasn't passionate about before. I found myself in this place, and then as I continued to do it, I cultivated a passion for it. Even for medicine, I didn't know I wanted to do medicine until I started seeing medical patients. So things like clinical experiences, research, teaching, employment, all this helps, but it helps by building you up as a person. Find opportunities that will stretch your patience, your compassion, deepen you as a person. You want to be asking yourself the hard questions. What makes you anxious? What are you afraid of? What makes you happy? What are the good things? What makes you continue on living? What are the formative life experiences that you have? You want to, once again, cultivate a passion for what you are already doing. So, if you're a freshman right now, things to be thinking about. You want to be using your classes and your grades as a metric to understand the extent of your learning skills. Learning is a skill. It's something that you develop. Anything like running, playing guitar, playing piano. All these things are skills. It takes time to develop. You don't learn it overnight. You want to sign up for at least 2 or 3 of your prerequisites. So these are courses like biology, chemistry, organic chemistry, physics, English. You enjoy doing. And you want to keep a written log of this for your curriculum vitae. So that's your resume. It'll come in handy later. When you become a sophomore, you want to continue to assess and adjust your learning skills. Once again, learning is a skill. Cover as many courses as possible that will be tested on the Mcat that are not the prerequisites. So things like humanities courses, sociology, psychology. Dive deeper into the activities that you are already doing, or seek new opportunities to do things that you truly enjoy. So junior year, you want to assess and adjust your soft skills. So these skills include communication, decision-making, self-motivation, leadership, teamwork, creativity, time management. Once again, these are skills that don't come easily. These are things that you need to practice every day, and you need to assess for yourself, examine, see if you're doing it better every time. And you want to aspire to finish your prerequisites prior to Mcat, because it's extremely difficult to learn the subjects for the very first time when you take it to Mcat. Schedule, prepare, and take it. Prepare your applications complete with letters of recommendation and personal statements. So the MCAS opens up on May 1st of every year, and then submission opens up on June 1st, or June 5th. And you want to apply to medical school early, and that's going to really increase your chances for admittance. So as a senior, once again, you want to be assessing your soft skills, and then you want to interview and complete your secondary applications. Alright, so here's a resource that I wanted to recommend called MSAR, the Medical School Admissions Requirements. It's a $25 per year subscription, but I think it's a resource that's well worth the money. So it tells you key application dates. It gives you MCAT scores and GPAs for schools and what their average acceptance rates It gives you the required and recommended pre-medical coursework, as well as the school's mission statement. See if it lines up with what you want to do with your own life. Medical school class profiles and research opportunities. And this might be important, especially for students who are interested in MD, PhD options. Okay, so where should you apply? So you want to be realistic, but don't sell yourself short. You want to be reaching up high, but at the same time, have your own target demographic for the schools that you're looking for. You want to apply to a few reach or dream schools. You want to apply to the vast majority schools that you are very competitive for, as well as having a few safety schools. Never apply to a school that you would not go to. Factors to consider include location, admission, and cost. Academic focus of the school, whether they like to do research-oriented as well as primary care or some kind of subspecialty. And then the curriculum of the school, does it fit with you? And then does the grading system, GPA and Mcat score, do they all match for this school? And then here's another resource that we like to recommend. It's called prospectivedoctor.com, and it gives you a chance predictor for the likely medical schools that you should be applying to, the ones that you are reaching for, as well as the ones that would be good for a safety school. All right, and the last factor to kind of think about is tuition. And medical school and medical education is not cheap. So for the schools in our state, Emory has a tuition of $49,800, MCG of $27,800, Mercer about $41,000, Pecan $48,000, and then Morehouse $43,000. And this is per year. This does not include the additional costs of living. If you're living within Atlanta, the cost of living can be anywhere between $15,000 to $25,000 easily. Over 4 years, that really racks up, and you can easily come out with about $300,000 or more of debt. All right. So in-state school and public schools are definitely a consideration to have in terms of tuition price. All right, so in 2015, the Mcat was changed, and I'd like to invite my friend Becky to discuss this topic with you guys.
So the Mcat is the medical college admission test, and it's really important because it's the only standardized way for medical schools to assess applicants. So for example, applicants are gonna do pre-med like at all different schools, different backgrounds and different majors, but the Mcat is the one way that they can compare everyone on a level playing field. So especially if your GPA is on the lower end, by the time you're applying, you've had 3 years of courses, and it's going to be harder to raise your GPA. Whereas for Mcat, if you prepare for like 1 or 2 months, it's a good way to increase your chances of getting in and just boost your application in general. So Mcat scores are scaled so that 500 is the middle of the curve, it's 50th percentile. And if you're to the right of the curve, you're above the median, and to the left, you're below the median. A lot of parents are wondering what's the best way to prepare for the Mcat, and there's really 2 different ways you can do it. You can either do a commercial prep course, like with Kaplan or Princeton Review, or you can self-study at home. And there are pros and cons to both. Like the commercialized prep courses are going to offer a lot more resources. They're going to give you a study schedule and flashcards and a lot of practice questions, but then it's going to end up being pricier than if you self-study at home. But whichever method you do, you just need to make sure that you prepare adequately and just stay disciplined and make sure that you do everything you can to prepare before you take the test. For letters of recommendation, most schools are going to ask for 2 science faculty letters, 1 non-science and 1 physician letter. And you're going to want to develop relationships with these people early on. And this is something that doesn't come naturally to a lot of students, but it's a necessary skill, and if you start early on, the more personal that your letter can be when it's time for them to submit it. Also ask in advance, at least 1 month in advance, and make it easy for them to write about you. Give them your personal statement, give them your resume, and meet with them so that they know what you're like and why you decided to go the medical route. And then at the end, don't forget to send a thank you note because they did you a favor and they took time out of their days to advocate for you and your application to medical schools. Okay, and the personal statement is really the one section in your application that you have complete control over. You can write about anything, but you need to make your story stand out and convince the admissions committees that they should accept you to their school versus other applicants. So for a lot of pre-meds, they're gonna have similar stories. They're all gonna, they're all gonna write about how they wanna help people. They're all gonna have volunteer experiences and leadership in clubs. So you need to show, not tell. Basically, everyone can say they want to help people, but if you focus on your experiences, like 1 or 2 experiences from your volunteer opportunity, for example, then you can talk about patient encounter or like something that was life-changing for you, why you decided to go the medical route. And my number 1 tip is to start early. It's surprisingly really difficult to talk about yourself because it's not like an essay for a class where you're reading and analyzing someone else's work. You have to advocate for yourself. So kind of mentioned this earlier, but keep a journal throughout your pre-med years so that you have a record of everything you've done, and then when it's time to write about it, you will have an idea of what your favorite moments were or your big moments were on this pre-med journey. And don't forget to ask for feedback. Honestly, personal statements are going to go through multiple drafts before they're ready to be submitted. Most universities have a writing center, and they can look over it to see if you, like for grammar and whether you're answering the prompt. Mentors, like other medical students or someone who's been on the route path that you've been on, then they are going to be a good resource to look over because they've been in your shoes, they have the experience. And then finally, someone who knows you really well, like your best friend or even your parents, they're going to know whether your personal statement is an accurate reflection of who you are as an applicant. So they're another person that just have a lot of people read over your personal statement so that it's the best that it can be. And then I also wanted to talk really quickly about DO schools because there's not as much information out there as there are with MD schools. So DO is a doctor of osteopathic medicine, and osteopathic medicine is really a hands-on approach to treating and diagnosing. So for example, if you go see a DO physician for neck pain, they're gonna be able to try to treat you and give you some therapies that will hopefully give you some relief before you leave their office. So in addition to that, they're not just going to use OMM, they're also able to treat, diagnose, order labs, everything that an MD physician is able to do. Because there's a lot of confusion about whether a DO is a fully licensed physician, and they are. Once you finish your residency, you can go on to practice on your own. But there are notable differences, and you should be aware of these if you're interested in going the DO route. First of all, you're going to be applying through ACOMAS, which is the application that all DO schools use. And then also, because we're using OMM, we start learning that from week 1. You're going to have weekly labs and lectures on how to do OMM. And then during your 3rd year, there's also a rotation. So every medical student is going to do a family medicine rotation or like general surgery. DO students also do 1 rotation in OMM. And then finally, for board exams, when it's time to get licensed, you're going to be taking the COMLEX levels 1, 2, and 3 rather than the USMLE. And it is an option to take it, and it's pretty, like most students do take the USMLE, but it's not required. Only the COMLEX is required for graduation. Okay, and then really quickly, I wanted to talk about the MD-DO merger. because there's a lot of, there's not that much information, and what's out there is kind of confusing. But basically, there used to be separate MD residency programs and DO residency programs. And in 2015, they decided to merge the two into a single accreditation system. So then now every residency program that's accredited in the US is held to the same standards. And if you're pre-med now, the transition should be complete by then. It's supposed to be done by 2020, so it shouldn't affect you, but it's something that it's good to know for the future. And the next story is going to be talking about the interview process.
All right, I'm sorry, I know this presentation is long, so stick with us for just a few more minutes. Okay, so we're going to talk about interviews. Firstly, format. So there's several different kinds of formats. So open file and closed file usually go together. So the open file is where your file is open, so your interviewer knows everything about you, all your scores, what you've done, your personal statement, they've read it all. So they can go more in depth in one area or ask about kind of everything. Whereas your closed file, your interviewer knows your name and nothing else. So they kind of start off with that dreaded, tell me more, tell me about you, who are you? And you're like, my name is, so these are things I'll tell you later. You gotta really practice for those, so we'll go ahead and go into that later. Finally, there's the MMI, so it's the multiple mini interviews. So this is kind of a speed dating format. So the general idea is that you get 90 seconds to read a scenario, kind of think of what you want your answer to be, and you get 5 minutes with an interviewer, and then you just kind of discuss what that scenario is. For example, you might have an ethics scenario. So you were working with a resident physician, you saw him go out last night, he got really drunk, he came into work the next morning, still drunk. What do you do? It's like there's no one right answer, but it kind of is. So those will be the things that you're discussing. So other topics, leadership, health policy, healthcare is really big right now. You don't have to be an expert, just kind of know a few things about it, be able to discuss something, and be able to have some opinions about these things. So on to kind of more in-depth tips. So before you ever get to interview day, what you should be doing is finding out what research the interview format. So I know MCG does open file and closed file, so you have one of each. I think Emory does MMI. I think all the rest of the Georgia schools do open and closed. So learn which one you're about to go into, and then practice. This is the only word that's going to be bolded on this slide for a very good reason, because you don't know how awkward it is to talk about yourself until you try to do it. Okay, so set up mock interviews with your school, if they do it, with your friends, family, get as many people to ask you questions, and then just practice. I mean, you don't want to be robotic in your responses, but you do want to know what you're going to say, kind of the flow of what you want to say. And then this is kind of difficult to practice, but expect unexpected questions. So if you can get friends or family just to, right before you start your little mock interviews, say, can you ask me a question that I haven't written down on this piece of paper or something, just so you notice your own response to a question that you didn't think you were going to get asked. So you see, oh, do I freeze and stop thinking at all, or do I just start saying everything that comes to my mind? So you can gauge your own response, and then you can tailor how to practice after that. Thoroughly know your own application. First of all, you have to be ready to address anything like, oh, I took off a semester halfway through college. Somebody might ask you, why? Why did you do that? I failed a class. Okay, why? What happened? What was going on? How did you fix that? Those kinds of things. Also, if you do anything like research or extracurriculars, so if you're thinking about it, you're applying and you go through 4 years of undergraduate school, are you really going to remember every single day of your hospital volunteering in freshman year? But your interviewer might really know that hospital, and so they might ask you, oh, did you work with this doctor? Did you see this procedure or whatever? I know they do that a lot for students. So really know what you put down in your own program or your own application. After every interview, everybody's going to ask you, oh, so do you have any questions about our school? And you just look much more interested in the school if you say, oh yeah, actually I was wondering about, I know you do a lot of cancer research, so could you tell me more about that? How are you involved in that? Or do you know anybody, kind of things like that. I mean, it doesn't have to be cancer research, but tailor it to the school that you're applying to. On interview day, dress professionally. I have some examples up here. Guys, you gotta wear the suit and tie. Girls, medicine is a very conservative profession. Practice sitting down with whatever you're going to wear. If the skirt rides up too high, it might not be the best choice. If your shirt, goes too low, if you bend down, be confident and be yourself. If you're not a confident person, be your most confident self, okay? And this is something you can actually practice. In the Korean culture, it's not, I guess, we don't make a lot of eye contact, we're not very direct. So this is something that you have to realize in the American culture. They want you to look them in the eyes, they want you to give a firm handshake, they want you to walk beside them when you're walking next to them, things like that. And then again, you prepared those questions, so if they ask you, do you have any questions, then you can use one of those questions that you already prepared. And then after your interview, send thank you emails, thank you notes. Some people like handwrite all their notes, and then follow up with the school, like the admissions office, etc. So some sample questions. These are just a few. There are so many out there, you can Google them. But just kind of the thought process that you need to have is, okay, so why do you want to be a doctor? If somebody asks you, why do you want to be a doctor? As we already talked about, everybody can say, oh, I want to help people. Okay, so you have to be able to communicate even more, like, why is that my life's mission? Why do I really want to spend the next 7+ years, in schooling, not making any money, to really, why do you want to do this, Make sure it's in line with your personal statement. If you write about, some trip that you had and you realize you really wanted to go into primary care, you love, doing mission trips, and then, you get there and they say, why do you want to do medicine? And you're like, well, I really want to do, like, this really specialized surgery and whatever. It's like, well, that's not what you wrote in your application. You look like a liar, So, again, know your application. And so these are just some other questions that might get asked. What do you do if you don't get into medical school this year? What are your biggest weaknesses? Things like that. So be prepared to answer these kinds of questions. And then some interview psychology, so things they don't tell you. Act and be confident, we already talked about that. Just being confident makes other people believe in you more, even if you don't feel it at all. So something you can do is try to mirror your interviewer's body language. So if they start, like resting their head on their chin, you might want to kind of move your arm up and brush your own, I don't know, maybe that's too much, but it helps you be more likable. Reflective listening. If I'm talking to you and you're looking at me and nodding, I know you're listening. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna look at you more because I think you're interested in what I'm saying. If you're kind of like, not really paying attention, I'm like, well, I don't think they really care about what I'm saying. So nodding the head, smiling, making eye contact, things like that. The halo effect. So I guess you might look more like an angel. I don't know if you're paying attention. But this is basically, sit up, smile, you look more interested to the interviewer. The von Reschdorf effect. This is a double-edged sword. So if you do something that makes you stand out, you're more likely going to be remembered. So like a no doubt, right? So say you wore an orange tie to your interview and everybody else wore like blue. So they're going to say, oh yeah, that guy with the orange tie or whatever. However, if you do something like, oh, you're really rude to the admissions committee when they held the door open for you and you just walked through without saying thank you, I don't know. But then they might say, oh, that's the guy who's like really rude, or the girl. That was really rude. I don't think they're the one. So try to stand out in good ways, not bad. Again, when you have questions, everybody can Google questions and say, oh, what about this research project or whatever with your school? Why not try to ask them questions like, why did you come to this medical school, to your interviewer? What made you choose this school over all others to work at? And then don't be afraid to pause. If you get asked one of those unexpected questions, it's not a bad thing to just take your time and think and say, I haven't really thought about this before. Just take a few minutes. Don't worry about it. And then those are all things to practice before interview day. You don't want to be so caught in your own head trying to say, okay, smile, nod, okay, eye contact, handshake. Pay attention on interview day, okay? So, that's the most important thing. And then finally, life in medical school. I know this is probably, you're not really thinking about this, but just a brief overview. So what happens is you usually have didactics for about the first 1.5 to 2 years. That's like lectures, anatomy, etc. And then you get your clinical rotations 3rd and 4th year-ish. So that's when you actually go to clinics, go to the hospital, you practice, you pretend like you're a doctor. And then that's when a lot of the clinical learning happens. And then you can also do things like research, interest groups, etc. And then you will have more board exams, it's kind of like Mcat on steroids. And finally, this is all the schooling and work and whatever, but you're still a person. You will have time to talk to your family, to cook, to exercise, all those things. Maybe not every single week or not every single day, but it's kind of an ebb and flow. So you have to create the time, and as Kuda was talking a lot about, you really have to find out a lot about yourself and how you learn and what works best for you, because if you just try to go, 24/7, you're gonna burn out and it's gonna be miserable. So really find out, how do you relax? What do you like to spend your time on doing, etc. So when you develop yourself, it makes you a better physician because you relate to your patients better. And I think that's it. Yay. All right, please feel free to contact us at any time with any questions, and I'll hand it back over to London.
All right, let's give a round of applause for these. Before we jump into the question and answer session, I would like Dr. S.B. Choi, the chairman of the board of Korean American Medical Association. He has a lot of valuable insights and input supporting us medical students, and I think you should definitely hear what he has to say.
I didn't really prepare any talk. I just want to interact with you so that I can give some of my perspective. And before I talk about some of the things that I want to share with you, as Wonjo told you, we really appreciate your coming, but also we thank 배 원장님, 한인회에서 이렇게 자리를 마련해주시고 또 여러분 서포트 많이 해주셔서 감사하고 또 이 코리안 커뮤니티 미디어에서 이렇게 또 홍보를 많이 해주시고 여기 또 오시고 그래서 너무 감사합니다. Overall, I really wanted to appreciate you medical students who's really trying to put effort to share, because this is about sharing, and we really have to put ourselves in perspective. We'll talk about it a little later. My emphasis to you is about path. Path is what's important in life. 길을 잘 선택하는 것이 참 중요합니다. 제가 메디컬 스튜던트나 카운슬 스튜던트한테 이렇게 카운슬 할 적에 뭐를 제일 emphasize 하면은 길을 잘 택하라. You need to find the right path for you, because that will ultimately determine your lifelong satisfaction. 인생을 뒤에 볼 적에 내가 어떻게 인생을 살아가는 일을 갖다가 저지할 적에 길을 잘 택하는 것, 그것이 참 중요하다고 생각해요. So now, of course, the question is, as presented, why become a doctor? And it's a big question, because you're talking about $1 million commitment. 그 닥터가 되기 위해서는 한 $1 million 필요하다고 얘기를 합니다. 통계적으로. Why $1 million? Because first of all, it's a huge amount of educational debt. As Kudo says, it's about $200,000 to $300,000. 20만에서 30만 불 정도의 부채가 생긴다고 해요, 되게. 서포트 안 받고 의대를 졸업하고 그러면은. 그리고, and then you have to put a lot of time. You have roughly about 10 years of educational commitment beyond other peers who may start making money and employment and gaining their career path at college. But going to medical career means you have to commit 10 additional years plus minus. So with all that together, it's $1 million commitment, literally. So so you have to really ask your question whether it's this right path for you to take or not. And even after you get into medical school, because when I interact with the medical students, I also tell them you have to choose the right specialty for you. That's more important than which program you get into. Same thing with the medical school. Which medical school get into is not as important. Whether you decide to get into medical school or not is the most important. 그래서 그 자기의 갈 길을 잘 선택하는 거 참 중요하다고 생각해요. 그래서 그 어떤 방법은 이제 그 쉐도잉 한다든가 또 닥터라든가 이런 사람들한테 그 인포메이션, 인사이드 인포메이션을 좀 받는다든가 또 뭐 구글 리서치 한다든가. So you have a lot of different ways to try to get information that is pertinent to you and your children, whether it's suitable for you or not. A lot of us parents really want the kids to grow up to get doctor. And that's a universal phenomenon. 여러분들께서 잘 아시다시피 자식이 있으면 닥터가 됐으면 하는 그런 바람이 많죠. 그런데 그것이 정말 옳은 거를 한번 잘 생각해봐야 됩니다. And I just want to also share with you some statistics. As you know, doctors make more money than other career fields. That's perception, but things are changing. As you know, the Affordable Care Act by Obama administration was really trying to tilt toward the Korean phenomenon. They really wanted to see the healthcare in this country to become copying more of Korean. So if you talk to Korean patients and the physicians, there's a lot of dissatisfaction. I don't want to get into too much details, but what I'm really pointing out to you is that the dollar amount that you can earn lifetime as a physician may be changing. 의사로서 돈을 많이 버는 그런 때는 지났는지도 모릅니다. 그걸 다 생각하셔야 돼요. There's also lifestyle. Physicians has to spend a lot more hours. Sometimes you have to be called at 3 o'clock in the morning. Dr. Reed was on call last night. He probably stayed up all night. And there's a lot of stress factors, not only psychologically but physically. There's also constant threat of a lawsuit. 특히 미국에는 그 러여가 많아가지고 lawsuit을 쓸데없이 하는 그런 게 많아요. 그래서 의사로서 그런 것도 상당히 고심을 많이 해야 됩니다. 그리고 의사가 된 후에도 average working hour, there are about 50, they say about 50, the statistics shows about 55 hours per week is the average working hour for physician which is established. 55 hours, which is in contrast to 40 hours supposed to be. 그래서 그런 것들을 다 감안을 하셔야 되고, but on the other hand, a physician is unique in that physician can help people, and it sounds like a cliche. 그냥 보편적으로 많이 얘기를 하죠. 닥터가 되면은 다른 사람 도와줄 수 있다. 근데 그거는 이제 실제 그런 거를 우리가 잘 생각해야 되는 게 영어로 하면 한국말 자꾸 왔다 갔다 해야죠. 일부러 하는 겁니다. 일부러. It is very important for physician to give a correct diagnosis and correct treatment because it will impact somebody's life. And literally, one can actually make a huge impact. And me as a physician practicing, I have encountered many occasions where the correct diagnosis and making a quick decision made a huge difference in somebody's life. And the physician's practice, and this is for medical students also, being a physician practicing daily is like you walk in the jungle and all you see is green leaves and the trees and muds. And then you walk and suddenly there's a snake lurking at you. In other words, it's like a mundane life. Mundane, you have a common problem. And then suddenly there's a sudden potential emergencies. You cannot not diagnose that and make a quick action on those. And so it's rewarding in that way, but also very stressful. I want to just close this remark before I hand it over to Dr. Reed. Dr. Reed, I would like to add a few more words after I wanted to introduce him to you, but this phenomena we are sitting here today is phenomena of helping each other. I want to just give you one statistics. For average Mcat and GPA scores, there are overall throughout the United States, there is a discrepancy in the acceptance rate for race. I want you to be aware of that. Asians, Korean being one of them, have about 20% chance of getting. If you average about GPA is about 3.5, and Mcat in old way is about 27 or so. 36 was the perfect score. And the white for the same group is about 30%. The black is about 80%. Hispanic about 60%. I want you to be aware of that. And when I looked at it, I really wanted to put more effort for us to share information. And that idea is being carried out by current medical students, and that's really a problem, a part of it. And can you just give me some round of applause? And they come out and do this thing. Now, I'll be happy to answer some questions now, a few. I'd like to also invite your comments for the future forums and how students can help you out for the future, at the session, question and answer sessions. I also wanted to, one more thing is that this is the third annual forum, and I hope that this is helpful to some of you, and some of you, many of you become successful. Hopefully, do the same thing, carry on, sharing our opportunities. And I'd like to just say one more thing before I close. That is, this was studied by medical students 3 years ago, organized the KAMSA, and also one of the main activity of that was this forum. That was 3 years ago. And it was initialized and organized by Mina Choi, in the back there. Can you wave your hand? I just want to recognize her, that's all.
Okay, so what we'll do is have a general open Q&A for 10 minutes. But I'd like to invite all the KAMSA medical students up here. So can you guys come up here right now? And we'll open it up for 10 minutes for a general audience. And then we'll start, and we'll introduce Dr. Reed. However, I want you to know that after Dr. Reed's talk, we're willing to stay after, because I know that you have more personal or situational contextual questions that, like, such as, I know, like, can my Mcat compensate for my low GPA? Or like, how much does it matter if I do this course at another school? And like, how much does my undergraduate school really matter in the application process? That's the kind of question that is built more on experience and seeing how our friends done it. So if you have that kind of question, we'll be more than happy to stay after Reed's talk and talk to you about each situation. So if you guys have any questions about the application process or some of these questions right now, I really encourage you to say it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking about taking a gap year. What are some opportunities or what are some experiences you can do during the gap year?
So actually, most people nowadays take gap years. For example, in my class as well, I think about 50% of people have taken gap years. And for a gap year, what you want to do is to do something that that you like. I mean, there are all opportunities such as I took a gap year for 1 year. I continued to work at the lab that I was working in during undergrad. It was a totally experience for me to continue my research then, because going to class and then going after hours to do research is completely different from dedicating your hours and having, thinking through your own problems and having all day to read papers and do it. And I want you, even if research is not your interest or cup of tea, do something else. Volunteer. It doesn't have to be clinical. Do something that you like, actually. And some people choose to do masters, but just because you go to a master's program doesn't increase your chance of getting into medical school either. So if you're doing a master's program, choose a program that you really like. It doesn't have to be medically related. So what I encourage is continue what you're actually passionate about. Something you carried on from your undergrad is what I can recommend. But I wouldn't recommend saying okay, for this year I'm not gonna do anything, I'm just gonna apply. Sure, it could work out. I have a lot of friends who worked out very well for them too. But at the same time, why spend that year not cultivating your interest? And why not it could also strengthen your CV as well. but I recommend you to look into different ways. Okay? Yeah.
How important do you think your undergrad school is in affecting your medical decision?
I can answer that or you just- How important is choosing undergrad? I mean, how important is your undergrad influencing your medical school?
Like the actual school itself?
This one. So undergraduate, unfortunately, does matter a lot. That doesn't mean that everybody. For example, I went to Duke University, and I have a lot of friends who did pre-med, but many of them did not make it to medical school. And I go to Medical College Georgia, where they're from in-state schools, and from Harvard, and they're from everywhere. So does going to a good school affect your chances of getting into a good medical school or medical school period? Yes, it does matter. But is it the only thing that matters? Not necessarily. There are plenty of people who go to state schools and end up with Ivy Leagues anyways. So it's about building your situation. There are so many applicants who apply to good schools, and the chances are they're not gonna read all the applicants. They're gonna filter you out. Look at your GPA and they're gonna look at your Mcat, and that's how they do things at more tougher schools. But they also want to build image as well. So for example, if let's say you're the director of a Northeastern Ivy League school, where you say, oh, 36% of our students are from the Northeast, or 25% went to an Ivy League. That makes you look better. That makes your program look stronger. So of course it matters. But does that mean you have no chance of going there? Obviously not. They're saying that we are, but at the same time we're very open. We pick students from everywhere in the state. They like to promote that. In short, it matters, but it also depends who reads it. And it's not just like a medical school thing. It depends on who's in the admission process, who's reading your paper and advocating for you. It all depends. Any other questions?
It seems like there's a penalty for being Asian, from what you've shown us. Are there ways of minimizing the penalty? For example, Senator Elizabeth Warren says she identifies as being American Indian. Doing something like that, or maybe don't put Asian, it's other, whatever. I mean, is there decent methods to minimize the Asian penalty?
Yeah, so I think that's an incredibly interesting question, and it's an interesting topic that we don't really know. We have looked at the data, or I have looked at the data personally, and it can be easily misconstrued to make it look like Asians have a disadvantage. But when you look at the actual numbers of the number of Asian applicants out there, the reason is the Asian applicant tends to be more competitive, tends to have higher Mcat score, tends to have higher GPA. So then within that one ethnicity, the whole group, the median and the mean of their average scores is shifted up. So we have basically, yes, we are competing against other ethnicities, but mostly we are competing against ourselves. And this is what makes it kind of difficult. So for the average American, or the average Asian applicant, the average Asian applicant is different from the average overall applicant. So is there a way to minimize that? I'm trying to answer your question. I don't know the answer to that. I'm really sorry, but we can definitely look into that.
한국말로 질문해도 되죠?
네.
의대생이 되셨는데 장사꾼 아들은 장사꾼이 되고 의사들은 의사인이 될지 모르지만 부모님이 어떤 역할을 어릴 때부터 지금 의대생으로서 진로를 결정하는데 어떤 역할을 하셨고 예를 들어서 푸시를 많이 하셨다든지 아니면 의료 서적을 어릴 때부터 막 사주셨다든지 그런 구체적인 지금 진로를 결정하게 된 계기가 부모님이 하신 역할이 있으면
저희 반에 저희 반 클래스메이트가 지금 한 140명 정도 되거든요. 근데 그 중에서 반은 부모님 여기 사신 것 같아요. 그리고 또 다른 학교 가도 의사분들 자녀분들이 많이 와요. 근데 어쨌든 최종 결정은 본인이 하는 게 맞긴 한데 영향을 부모님으로부터 많이 받기는 하거든요. 근데 그렇게 온 학생들 중에서도 만약에 부모님이 푸시해서 왔다. 자기가 하고 싶은 건 뭐 변호사라든지 기자라든지 뭐 저널리스트라든지 다른 건데 부모님이 푸시해서 온 경우에는 중간에 많이 드롭하거나 모티베이션을 잃고 또 결국에 자기가 하고 싶었던 그런 쪽으로 가는 경우가 많은 것 같아요. 그래서 부모님이 해줄 수 있는 역할은 제 생각에는 본인이 하고 싶은 진로를 찾게 도와주는 거. 의대를 가라고 푸시를 하는 것보다는 의대 공부가 굉장히 힘들어서 본인 의지가 없으면은 부모님 푸시만으로는 제 생각에 버텨나가기 힘든 것 같아요.